Everything in life is story. Story is how we share ideas, politics, vision, fantasies, experiences, even our hopes and dreams. The Gibson Gazette is a podcast show devoted to story, those we consume, those we tell ourselves, and those told to us. Hello, hello, our lovely people. Or should I say our Gibson Gazetters? This is AMC Anne Marie Collingwood on the ones and twos. And I'm here joined by my co-host, LFG, L. Michael Gibson. Say hello to the people.
Hello, hello, hello. How are you all?
All right, now with the sexy tone, let's go.
Let's call vodka.
Oh boy, we
So
all know
once
where that
again,
ends up.
audience, right?
Oh
Once again,
boy.
audience, AMC was like, just give me 15 minutes, and I was like, okay, I'll do a little sippy sip. A half hour later, I'm now on second drink,
Ooh.
giving once again, girl. I thought we was like, what had happened?
Let
So
me let me just
what had
put
happened,
this out for the
AMC?
people. Okay, what had happened is 4 years ago I gave birth to a little mini me, and that one threw a monkey wrench in my scheduling and timelines. Let me tell you, I am horrible. When it comes to trying to be in a place on time, that I could usually do, give and take, maybe 10 minutes, but I was never a late person beforehand. This I'm still trying to get try to get an even keel on. It's not working, obviously, as you can hear, because some
That
people have
poor
time to
Mom.
get litty lit waiting for me, and that's not the move. So
That
I
poor,
gotta
poor wetback.
try. I gotta try harder.
That poor crumb snatcher being blamed.
Yeah,
You see how this
my
mama
little
do?
mini
She
me. Hell
blaming
yeah,
the
I'm gonna blame
baby. Oh,
him.
that's
Parents
terrible.
know. They know. That's
Blaming
how
the
we do.
baby.
We blame the baby. That's right. That's how it
As a
goes.
single person,
So
I find that unconscionable. I don't know nothing about that life. Though I may be, I may be getting. I found today or yesterday that I finally saw a picture of my future golden retriever puppy. So so
Oh,
that
you're
would be
getting a
my
puppy?
baby. I was, all of my dogs for the most part have been rehomed adult dogs, and but I'm in a foreign
Mm.
country, which means that any rehomed adult dog I get will have learned Spanish as the language that they respond to, and I am not proficient.
Mm-hmm.
So when I am in the
Okay.
moment, I need to be able to communicate with my dog and the dog. And for people who don't know nothing about animals, who feel like I'm being silly about the language thing, dogs know. Research science has found that
Mm-hmm.
dogs can respond to about 138, 33 words, something like that. That they actually do have a vocabulary. I mean, I think we're starting
They're
to see a little bit of
smart.
that also with those buttons that people are using to communicate with their dogs. I have yet to decide if I want my
Mm-hmm.
dog to
Mm-hmm.
call me a bitch to myself and what I want to go. So I don't know if I'm doing that. We'll see. We'll see how much communication do I
Oh
really
God.
want from my dog. But
Mm.
yeah. So I'm gonna get two puppies. I'm gonna
Oh,
separate them
two.
by 6 months. Yeah, I want a lab, I want a Labrador, and then I want a golden retriever. So the golden retriever is what we found first. So that'll be my first dog, and then 6 months later, I'll bring on a lab. My understanding from people who have done this is that it's good to space them out instead of getting them both at the same time because the dog that's older, that's 6 months older, can help train the dog that's younger in what it is that you want or like.
Really?
Yeah,
Okay.
so I'm gonna space them out because I wasn't getting both at the same time because I didn't want puppies to begin with because puppies are unpredictable and I'm a Capricorn. I don't
Sure
like a lot of
are.
unpredictability in my home. I like to know. So these will
It'll
be
be
some. We might have some
fun.
stories for you. Speaking of stories, we
I'm
might have some
sure.
stories for you about my future babies, my golden
I
babies.
can't wait to hear this. Do you have
Yeah.
names for them yet?
No, but I've named all of my dogs after jazz musicians. So my last
Ah.
dog was Charlie Parker Jr. and he was
Oh.
a pit. He was a beautiful tawny pit. Um, and the one before that was Buddy Rich Jr. And so we'll see the dog inspires in me.
Nice, nice. So let's tell the people what we have in store for them today.
Okay, so we gotta throw y'all a curveball every now and again. We can't just keep doing the same old. So we decide we gonna switch it up a little bit. Let's switch it up as we enter our 6 month with y'all. Now, anybody paying attention
Already.
to the numbers know that we have not actually done as many 6 month as many shows in those 6 months as we're supposed to with an every other week schedule. But y'all love us. Y'all you blame it on our heads, not our hearts, and our babies apparently. So you can. So this time we
Really?
decided, since both Anne Marie and I have both been journalists as cultural critics, that we would identify a horror movie, a comedy, a TV show, a musical, and an album that we believe is not as popular or well known as it should be. Doesn't mean it didn't have some acclaim when it came out, or it wasn't a critic's darling, or maybe even made some money at the time, but it's kind of gotten forgotten or lost in the years since. So we want to bring it back to the fore of your consciousness. We want you to be thinking about these amazing gems. Um, and I know some of y'all don't mess with horror, so this the horror part y'all might want to skip over. For those of you who don't mess with horror, apparently AMC didn't mess with horror. I'm a horror kid. I'm a little bit of everything
Ah.
kid, except Western and war movies. And even then, I have a few exceptions.
Oh yeah.
But
I don't do
yeah,
Western either. So yeah.
yeah, I'm not. As James Baldwin said, it's one thing to know that you're rooting for John Wayne as he's shooting down the Indians, only to come to realize
Mm.
that you're the Indians.
Mm. There you go.
So yes,
I
I'm not
mean,
as, I'm not as in love with the Western story. And war films, with some exceptions like Dunkirk. I love Dunkirk. I love 1917. But with
mm.
very very few exceptions, I'm not a war movie person. So it's not fun for me.
It's
But
f-
anyway, go
it's
ahead.
funny because I do love horror. Um, but the horror movies that I like are usually the generalized horror stuff that you see in the movies. So I'm not one that does like, the digging. My sister is that type. She'll sit down and watch what's that horror? There's a horror channel. Um
Oh, Shutter.
Fear or something like that. I can't remember.
Oh,
Sorry?
there's Fear and Shutter. There's Shutter as a streaming service, which I actually
Shutter.
have. And then yeah,
That's it. Yeah. Yeah, we have that too. And so she'll put me on to movies and we'll watch a few here and there. But to say that I'm a horror freak, no, I'm more of a psychological thriller drama type sci-fi kid. That's my
right.
role.
I mean, and
Yeah.
nowadays, horror bleeds into a lot of other genres like horror. There are horror comedies, there are horror sci-fi films, there are horror
True.
thrillers. So it's I think we're now in a state where everything is more remixed, and their pure genres are harder and harder to come by, regardless of. I mean, like for instance,
Hmm.
the latest Doctor Strange turned off a lot of people because it was a horror comic book film. You know,
So
the
I
new
heard,
season of
yeah.
Stranger Things is a horror sci-fi film
I love it. I love it.
or a series in this
Hmm.
instance. Yeah, yeah, I'm definitely checking. I've
Hmm.
already actually I binged the whole thing in one sitting, and I'm a gluttonous
I
pig
can't.
when it comes to.
I knew you would. I knew you would. I started it. I started. I just haven't finished it yet, but I did start it.
Yeah, I literally sat there and I
Knowing
was
you, I
like,
knew you would.
yeah, and then at certain parts I was like, I mean, because I think for me this is not my favorite season, even though I love horror. I did enjoy like calling out the references as they were happening, like, oh, that's it, oh, that's Jeepers Creepers, oh, that's Nightmare on Elm Street, oh,
Hmm.
that's Poltergeist. So there were definitely like a lot of references in the series, but there were like these long stretches of exposition that didn't necessarily lend much to the character development or the story, and it was just like,
Really?
and then there would be like a
Oh
great
man.
moment, And the last, I mean, I will say this: the way that they tied up the first half, because this season is broken up into two halves, and so I've essentially
Mm-hmm.
binged the first half of the season. And the second half, I think, comes to July 1st. Uh, the last two episodes really do tie up a lot of loose ends for all four seasons. So that was
Oh, really?
really
Okay.
enjoyable as a writer to see. Oh, they made all of that make sense. And things
Mm-hmm.
that before was just like, oh, this is just special and fantastical because that's the genre. They actually gave rationale and reason to, and going
Okay.
all the way back to the first season. So I was like, oh, y'all did that, okay, that too, which
Nice.
took away
Nice.
some of my like, oh, this is just okay, that I had kind of been feeling. So I moved from this is just okay to this is good. It's not as great as the first three, but it's good.
Okay. I mean, all right, all
So,
right. I mean, I'm still
all
gonna
right,
watch it. It's Stranger Things.
of course,
Awesome.
yeah, I'm gonna, and of course, I'm
Awesome.
gonna finish it in July
Of
1st.
course. In one sitting.
Anyway, and once exactly, there's no other way. Like I don't know how y'all wait for stuff. I have no patience for that. I'm gonna be quick with my horror, um, because I'm gonna be much more verbose when we get to the TV show and musical portions. So
All right.
my horror pick is The Bay, a 2012 ecological disaster slash horror film directed by Barry Levinson. In it,
Hmm.
the Chesapeake Bay on Maryland's eastern shore is filled with steroid enriched chicken excrement that's dumped from area chicken farms into the bay, causing
That's
the
gross.
supergrowth of isopods. You hold that thought.
Uh-huh.
uh, that causes the supergrowth of isopods, who in turn begin to move from infecting fish through their mouth like louses to infecting humans and eating their hosts from the inside out.
Oh no,
As a
sir.
result, as a result, an entire seaside town is ravaged by this plague in a documentary style that makes everything look authentically real. The true horror in the Bay is that isopods do exist, including giant isopods. I actually had to look stuff up.
Mhm.
And as in the movie, 40% of Maryland's Chesapeake Bay is in fact dead or lifeless. Um,
Hmm.
and that chicken waste is dumped into open water
Mm.
that we drink, boat, party, and swim in the bay.
Mm-mm.
So Levinson took all of these very real facts about our environmental horrors and connected them to make one of the best found films in the canon. The movie didn't even earn back its $2 million budget, but if you watch it, you will never be able to forget it. So I introduced this recently to my assistant, because
Mhm.
we have a thing where he's Mexican, so I'm introducing him to American horror films and musicals because were two things he told me he did not like when I met him, and I
Mhm.
have convinced him that there are good versions of both, and now he's a fan of both genres. But he has, for weeks after watching The Bay, been like, I'm still mad at you about The Bay.
You traumatized the guy?
He said he couldn't sleep that night, that he was dreaming of roaches, and I was like, of space roaches. And I was like, well, that wasn't the character.
Oh
Isopods aren't
my
space roaches, but I
god.
got the reference, right? Like, because they do, in the film, you see these crawl from out of fish mouth and onto a human. Um, and, right. And keep in mind, it's all
Oh my
documentary
god.
style. And so, they're really good about the documentary style aspect of it. And that's what makes it so terrifying. Like I am a longtime horror buff fan, and usually, I lean more towards slashers. But for me,
Mhm.
it's about whether or not something can either make me laugh, like, or
Mhm.
genuinely scare me. Is very hard to scare me at this point. I've been watching horror movies since I was 6. So in order to
Mm-hmm.
scare me, it has to be a really, really good horror movie. And The Bay is terrifying. And it's terrifying because
What?
you know that this actually could happen. There's like a, if you rent the DVD or Blu-ray, or if, I don't know if you can get extras one from streaming, but there's a documentary about the very real life things. And what Levinson says is that he thought about doing a documentary, but he said people, aren't, you're going to preach to the word well already, and people who already get it. And he didn't think it would have the same impact. So he made it into a horror film in the hopes of
Mm-hmm.
highlighting and raising awareness about these very real aspects of the film that are true. So and it was very effective for me. So that's my horror selection, The Bay from 2012, from 10 years ago. So check it out. Your turn,
I
AMC.
mean,
What you
using
got?
the documentary aspect made it
Yeah, and
even
I'm
more
actually not
real, I'm
a found
sure.
film
So,
person. Yeah, I'm not one of those people who actually like found films. I think the gimmick is
mm,
worn thin over the years, but in this one it really worked.
mm, I want to check that out now. I'm going to look for that. Sounds interesting.
What you got for me?
So, on my end, what do I got? All right, you guys are going to laugh. So, I want y'all to bear with me because I'm going to do this as a little twist because my horror movie picks, as I said earlier, they're kind of banal. And I'm a basic horror movie watcher. So really and truly, I would have gone with my favorite, which is Interview with the Vampire. But everybody and their mama has already seen that, so why even bother, right?
Well, wait, hold on. How do
I'm
you feel
going to.
about the fact that they're remaking it?
I don't know. I cringed when I saw that. It's funny because I'm not a big Tom Cruise fan. I always say that all I watch from him is Mission Impossible. That's it because he rocks
Right.
that. But Interview with a Vampire, him and Brad Pitt together, and then Antonio Banderas. I mean, come on, man, that was stellar. The acting was stellar. The adaptation from Anne Rice's book was stellar because that was a book and a half. I read that when I was a younger, and that scared the shit out of me. And I think it was just really, really well put together. The costume, everything. It was a fantastic film. It was so well done. So when I read that they were redoing it, and you guys already know how I feel about whole the covers and the readaptations and all of that. So that was one film where I was like, I don't know if we really need that. So, I will of course watch it just to critique it. And,
Hmm.
I wouldn't be surprised or would be surprised if I actually do end up liking it. So we'll see. But this original one, this one did it for me. This is really one of my favorites.
That's
It's a
interesting you
big one
say
for
that
me.
because I mean I'm intrigued by the fact that they're doing it as a limited series instead of a film, so you
Mm,
have more breathing room to actually let the story flesh out more. I
yeah.
actually did not buy Tom Cruise's Lestat. I bought Brad Pitt as Lewis.
No?
I love Brad
Mm-hmm.
Pitt as Lewis. Tom
Yes.
Cruise's Lestat still felt too modern for me. Um,
Mm,
and Brad just captured that 18th, 19th century essence so much better for me. And I feel like because this film was made in the early 90s, for those of us who are younger fans of this show, um,
mm.
that it didn't as lean into the homoeroticism as much as the books do.
No, no.
The books make
But
it
I
very
think it was the
clear.
time too, though, no? You
I
don't
mean,
think?
right, right. It was the '90s, and I think that was one. I mean, like the
Mm,
fact that they even was having the film made at all was considered controversial
mm,
because of the homoeroticism
right.
of the books. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to a more sexy, uh, you know,
Okay. Yeah.
version of this that's fleshed out. I mean, for me, there's still the tragedy is Claudia, the child vampire.
Yeah, the child.
Um,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that will always
What
be
was your name again?
lingering for me. And I was a huge Anne Rice fan, and for both the Witch series, which I'm more looking forward to than Interview with a Vampire series or the
Oh
Lestat
yeah,
series.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's. Mm-hmm.
The Witching Hour was my shit. Oh my god, I love the Witching Hour. But after a while, especially as your racial consciousness kicks in, I mean, and she's got her Feast of All Saints, which gives her kind of black bona fides. Because for those who don't know, the Feast of All Saints is a book about the Creole black folks in New Orleans, and it's not a supernatural book in the way that the other ones are, and it actually does center around an actual event. So, but
Oh, okay.
but you
I never
know,
read that one.
there's only so much of reading about the milky white skin, the fetishization of whiteness
Yes.
that Anne does in her novels.
Uh huh. Uh
Everybody's,
huh.
translucent and milky white
Pasty
and
white.
pearl white.
Yes, Bill.
It's like, girl, how many ways can you say white?
Yeah, yeah,
She's
yeah.
really into that. And so, after so many years, that stick kind of wore off. I left right around violin. I think it was kind of like the last Anne
Mm,
Rice
mm, mm,
era
mm.
book that I
I
read.
remember that.
But she had
Nice.
started going into like a mummy series, and I was like, yeah, girl, you got me for
No,
witches and
she lost me
vampires.
that.
You're not
I
gonna get me
was,
for anything.
yeah, I was good after that. Really, I was okay. She could have kept that, but that's all right. I mean, again, we'll see. We'll see how it goes. I know I'm gonna watch it, so don't be surprised, y'all, if we end up talking about it again once the
Hmm.
show does come out. But so I'm going to digress a bit, and I'm going to go with American History X. So I was actually flipping on Prime, and I saw it pop up. Now this is a movie that I think is amazing from beginning to end, um, discussion wise, etc. I'll get a little bit into that, but um, and it is a film that it's kind of gone on to become an underground classic, if you will. It did pretty okay at the box office, but outside of that, it became more of a conversation starter and word of mouth kind of film that traveled with word of mouth. Sorry, and a lot of people started to pick it up after that, and it's been used for school education purposes and panels and et cetera, about race and other teachings, if you will. So this is where I really started to dig Edward Norton as an actor. I think that's the first time that I really, really started to pay attention to him. And when I watched this movie, I was flooded with emotions. I was angry, I was sickened, I was empathetic to the character later on. And I was highly annoyed at some of the, things that were going on. The movie itself is a crime drama about a neo-Nazi skinhead who's Derek Vinyard. That's Norton's character, and he went to jail for a violent and horrific crime. I'm not even gonna go into the crime. It was beyond fathomable. Ugh. After a sexual assault and some time to think about his actions, he was released from jail. He was rehabilitated and repentant. So the only other twist there now is his brother Danny, who's played by Edward Furlong. He was really firm in carrying on in his brother's racist footsteps. And at the end, of course, it led to a terrible conclusion. So the movie was written by David McKenna, and it is impeccable. Like I mean, for me personally, I was taken aback by the writing. It was fantastic. And there were many lessons to be learned all throughout the movie, but what really got me was the heated discussion at the dinner table. There's a part where Norton's character's mom, played by Beverly D'Angelo, she brought home
Hmm.
a Jewish date, and the Jewish date was played by Elliot Gould. And this scene, it hits so many fevered pitches. It's harsh, it's heated, the angles are like in your face, and it shows everyone's perspective and their views and personalities and opinions in regards to race relations. And the argument is just as much fascinating as it's cruel and disgusting. Some of it is shot in black and white, which for me adds drama. I mean, any artist loves a good black and white still or documentary, so it adds a lot of power. behind the words and actions and gives it some context. So it's nowhere near 100% perfect regarding its underlying messages or tropes about, the black savior coming to save Norton while he was in jail. Avery Brooks played, his teacher, um, and Guy Torrey played a cellmate who helps him see, the right side of life, and for him to come out and totally see the light and forget about this whole Aryan race bullshit. So, watching Danny's character and personality change from intelligent jock, which is where he started, really smart, 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 to a whip smart racist is absolutely nauseating and disgusting. But you're so fascinated by it. It's a really interesting juxtaposition. But for me, everything comes together just as it should, the entire movie. The systematic nature of racist behavior, ideologies, and stuff, and when showed from the perspective of Norton's character, it's 100% accurate. His knowledge is insane, and it shows you how smart he is. And everything that he's learned and absorbed came from his father. So the writer himself, I pulled a quick quote from the writer himself, and he said, "The point that I tried to make in the script is that a person is not born a racist. It is learned through the environment and the people that surround you. The question that intrigued me is, why do people hate? And how does one go about changing that? My premise was that hate starts in the family, which we all know is true, especially after so many things that we've been privy to over how
Well,
long now? I mean,
I
I
mean,
think that that's a
I'm gonna let you
huge
finish, and
root.
then
That's a
I'll
huge.
give some thoughts.
I know you're gonna get. That's what we're here for. Some conversation. I think a lot of
uh,
it starts from home. I'm not saying all of it starts from home,
hmm.
but you're exposed to a lot from what you see around you, and of course that includes society and everything outside of that. But home is usually where the bubbling starts. So in the movie, you see his father started talking about, there was a book that they were given to read, and it was a black book by a black author about race, etc. And the father was basically at the point where he was talking about, oh, look at this book that they're giving you. It was written by the niggers, and this is how they are, and this is what they do, and why are they giving you this to read. And so that was the mentality that the father had from jump, and it was that and a lot of other different things in the way that his father acted towards not just black people but just BIPOC, if anything. um yeah, it was just a lot to take in. The whole entire movie is a lot to take in, but I think it's a brilliant perspective and a brilliant kind of no holds barred kind of presentation of race, especially from, I guess it was in 1998, right? So I don't feel like we were really deep in race relations then, where we talk about it, yes, but I feel like, if anything, more so now, that it, because of 2020, that it's just taken on a whole other form, and more so internationally than it has locally. So it's an interesting piece of work, and it does rank as one of my favorites for a lot of reasons. Edward Norton also was nominated for an Oscar for Best Actor.
Yeah, no, I mean, I get it, and I get why it's qualifies as a horror for you. So American History X for me is complicated. If we were doing our usual show of it's complicated, Edward Norton gave a very fine performance. I thought that he was well. I mean, he did a great job. He did what needed to be done, as La Roche says in Legendary. Um, and at the time, Norton was like the go-to person. It was during a period where Edward Norton was in everything. He was like the leading man for all the things. So it was a big deal that he would take on this. almost indie film. But I'm always one who's skeptical of, why certain films get elevated, why certain stories get elevated over others. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot is forgiven for me because this is based on a true story.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but there are also a lot of tropes in this story that, for me, are problematic. And um, part of what allowed me to forgive a lot of the tropes in this story was the fact that this was based on a true story. This had actually happened to a real life human. And, some black folks had helped him find his way. I don't personally believe it should be up to the emotional labor of black people to help white people find redemption and leave behind a life of white nationalism. Um, but that was his truth. That was what happened with him and the black folks.
Yep.
Uh, I also struggle. I mean, there's also this kind of prevailing narrative of these kinds of films, which is, that white people are essentially good and they're made bad by
Mm-hmm.
family or by trauma. Um, and so there's a such a strong desire in white fantasias that are filmed to kind of protest white innocence, even when the protagonist is clearly not an innocent person, even when they commit really vicious crimes, as this character did.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and and so there's always like a question of how much of this is film is letting people off the hook. I do like messages going all the way back to Rogers and Hammerstein's South Pacific with their very controversial at the time song from the late 1940s, "You Have to Be Carefully Taught," which I feel like this film is also echoing this idea that racism is taught to children by their family, by their parents. But we also know in more recent years, especially with the rise of social media, that a lot of folks who get indoctrinated are not necessarily coming from at least explicitly or overtly racist homes. They are often indoctrinated through the internet because they're feeling isolated or lonely or bullied or put upon in some way, and
Mm-hmm.
are looking for their tribe, and they find it on these 4chans and these Reddits, um, and become willing participants into in their indoctrination into white nationalism and white supremacist racism. And so,
Mm-hmm.
uh, yeah, so I feel like it's, to blame the parents is pat. Um, to put the emotional labor of his redemption on black people is uh, trite and outdated. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but again, at the center of this film is an incredibly powerful performance by Edward Norton. Is one of the things that helped people to take him seriously as a superstar in that period in which he was getting cast quite a bit in the leading male
100%.
roles.
Yep.
And even people like Guy Tori got a big break out of this, and from kind of buffoonish
Yeah.
roles. So
Mm-hmm.
so
Mm-hmm.
there's that. So again, it's complicated. This was somebody's real life. This is what happened to them. It's one of the reasons why it is used as part of curriculums and education to help reform white supremacists. Is that this guy had been an avowed hate-filled white supremacist and white nationalist, and had come out of that world, and
Mm-hmm.
an evangelist for equality. So, yeah, but I don't
Yeah, I
know.
know there are many tiers to this one. That's why I said earlier it's not 100% perfect, but I like what I like from it. You know what I mean? It's just
Yeah,
there's some things that
look,
really just stand out.
I just got through introducing to somebody to My Fair Lady, which is about as problematic and musical as they come. So, the Pole Young thing is
Why you
the
gotta be
epitome
like
of violence.
that?
They threaten to pour Elijah with violence at every turn.
Mm,
They
mm,
exploit her labor. They treat her badly. And then she chooses to be with the person who's beating her. I mean, like It's just not a good
It's
look. I mean, even
horrid.
carousel is for me. Like I love the Swerve carousel, but you know, sometimes a slap is like a kiss. There are words, there are
No,
lines
no.
that are like, no, sis, no, we cannot do you anymore. But anyway, I digress. What? Let me
Oh
see.
my.
So where are we going? Oh, so I think we're done with
We're going to
horror. I think
music. Yeah.
we're going to comedy. Actually, comedy is next. But before we do that, be sure to like, subscribe, follow, and share on whatever platform you're listening or watching us on. Also, comment or review where possible so that we can climb the charts of the various platform algorithms this show is on. We love it when you say lovely things about us. It also lets us know that you're actually even paying attention. Somebody, I forgot to tell you, I got an inbox from somebody I used to work with at a cafe years ago. And she was
Uh-huh.
like, talking about how warm and inviting she felt my voice was. I was like, "Oh, girl, you checking us out?" I was like, "I don't know that you."
Ooh.
I was like, "I don't know that you listened on the drunk and disorderly episode because I don't know how warm and inviting my tone. I don't know how warm and inviting my tone was then." But
Oh gosh.
we love feedback like that because we like to know that we're not spending money and doing all of this just for our own egos. That somebody's actually listening out there. Uh,
Right?
so my comedy is I Give It a Year. This 2013 romantic comedy, written and directed by Dan Mazer, of Borat and Bruno fame. He
Oh
co-wrote, he
boy.
co-wrote those. Huh?
No, I said, oh boy. You said Borat, and I'm like, oh boy, this is gonna be a trip.
Which I almost didn't want to say, because this couldn't
No.
be more different than the Borat and Bruno comedy style.
Mm-hmm.
The co-writer for those was Sacha Baron Cohen, and so Dan on his own without Sacha Baron Cohen is a much more witty, dry-witted, Frasier, Oscar Wildean kind of writer. The film stars Rose Byrne. For those who may not be familiar with her, she was the co-star with Glenn Close on Damages, the TV series. She also starred in
Yes.
Bridesmaids, the mega hit. Rafe
Mm-hmm.
Spall, who most recently appeared on Apple Plus's Trying. He also did films like Prometheus and The Big Short. Anna Faris of Mom and Scary Movie fame. Simon
Oh.
Baker from The Mentalist is also in it. It's filmed in London. They filmed it in London for like 12.7 million pounds, which I guess is something probably like $16 million. It earned almost 30 million at the box office. It was a modest hit. It wasn't a mega smash.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but in it, the story is ambitious ad executive Nat is and struggling writer Josh fall in love at first sight at a party. After 7 months together, they decide to marry. The film highlights their struggles during their first year of marriage, switching back and forth from flashbacks of the year to a marriage guidance counselor's office. The wedding goes as planned, despite many friends commenting that the marriage will not last. With an epic, and I do mean epic, Minnie Driver in a shade supreme role as Nat's sister, claiming at the wedding, I give it a year. So, thus the title. The
Oh
two learn
man.
over the course of that year that they might have rushed it, you think, after 7 months, and actually get on one another's nerves once they live together. Nats actually finds that she's embarrassed by Josh, and soon enough, he starts to feel and know that. Things are further complicated when they meet people they both might actually be better suited for, but are trapped in a marriage they claim they're fighting for by going to marriage counseling with, wait for it, Olivia Colman.
Oh.
And for those who may not, right, the Olivia Colman from Broadchurch
Mm.
and The Favorite, Oscar winner Olivia Colman, playing one of the worst marriage counselors ever. So I love it. I am that dry wit child. I like that sharp, shady looks, Golden Girls, Frasier, Arrested Development, tongue in cheek kind of thing. I'm not a broad comedy person generally. Like every once in a while, a movie like The Hangover or Bridesmaids will get me,
Mm,
and like I'm
yeah.
like fall out laughing. But usually, I'm much more into verbal comedies. Like I Give It a Year, and every single time I put it on, people love it. They love the shade. They
Mm,
love the. I mean, and there's a couple of like physical moments in it, but for the most part, the shade is very verbal. It's very cerebral, and I like all
mhm.
of that. That's my kind of comedy. So for those of you who like that kind of comedy, who think Oscar Wilde was one of the treasures of our lifetime, or not our lifetime, really the 19th century, but early 20th century, um, but who likes his antecedents in shows like Mark Cherry Productions and Joe Keenan novels. Like this is your girl. I Give It a Year from 2013. What about you? What you got
Mm.
for me? Have you ever heard of this or
I
seen it?
have I haven't. No, no. I'm learning ones and twos from you. You pulling out the punches today. Uh, I have the Bay to look up now. I have this one. So no, it sounds pretty cool. And there's some like A-list people up in there now, man. Wow. The cast sounds pretty
Hmm.
dope. Sounds cool. I will
Yeah.
check it out. Mine is, and I wouldn't be surprised if you watched it, to be quite honest. It's Happy Endings, which was a show that was on ABC in 2011.
Oh, one of the Wayans
It
brothers are in
had,
there, right?
yes, it
Okay.
actually was his son. It's his son. It's Damon Wayans Jr. He was in there. Alicia Cuthbert was in there. Um, the other faces you would know, but they're not really mainstream actors now. Like they pop up in movies and stuff, but is that's a nice way of saying that if I mention them, you will not even know them. So, but Damon Wayans, I'm trying to be nice here, but Damon Wayans Jr. for sure, you'll know that face. And maybe Zachary Kingston because I've seen him in a few other movies here and there, and Alicia Cuthbert, of course, everyone knows. So it was about six crazy friends. They were all just mad. Two of them were married, which was what's his name there? Damon Wayans Jr. Him and I believe Eliza Coop were married, and the rest of them were just all dysfunctional. You had, the daydreamer, you had the relentless, over the top, I will fall in love someday kind of chick. Then you had the guy who can never maintain a job. Then you had the boutique owner, and then you had like Jane and Brad. Brad was just always everything had to be perfect for Brad. Every single thing had to be perfect. And Jane was the same way. So both of them coming together and clashing as a couple was hysterics to watch. But all six of them together was just totally dysfunctional. But it was so much fun. And they were all friends in Chicago doing their thing. And it was just a series. It was almost like a more diverse, hyped up version of Friends kind of thing. I loved Friends back in the day, I won't lie. And I also loved all of my other black shows too. I'll get to that in a minute. But um Happy Endings was just a lot of fun. It was fun. It was fun to see the people that they had in the cast for reoccurring roles was fantastic too. Megan Mullally, come on, man, love her. And what Damon Wayans' dad, Damon Wayans Jr.'s dad. So Damon Wayans would pop in now and then as a neurotic father. He was insane, so just watching all of them come together and unravel as characters in their everyday adventures was fantastic. I loved it. And I love quick, witty writing. That's kind of like how they popped off. If anybody watched Buffy the Vampire Slayer back in the day, that was the shit. I loved that show too because there were a lot of quick, witty English literature quotes and book quotes, and so that's how the writing was for Happy Endings, really quick and witty, and I really enjoy that. So it sucks because it was actually canceled 2 years later, and a lot of people were mad, and including myself, because it was such a great show and it had a its own little following. But I guess ABC figured it, it didn't have such a big following and wasn't drawing in the numbers that they wanted. But after it was canceled and then everybody started to make an uproar about it, is when they were like, oh, well, maybe we should have kept it. Too late. Too late. So, yeah,
So
that was a great show.
I did watch Happy Endings. I found, I just looked it up. It actually is 3 seasons it lasted. I looked it up to see whether or not my first thought about it held true, which was that it was
Mhm.
ABC's response to New Girl. But both New
And
Girl and
yeah,
Happy Endings came out at the same time, and they have a very
mhm,
similar comedic sensibility. They
yeah,
both have the same kind of
yeah.
comedic tone and writing
Hmm.
style. Um, I stuck with New Girl a lot longer than I stuck with Happy Ending. I did about a
I
year and a
love
half of
New Girl.
Happy Ending, a season and a half of Happy Ending, and I
Mhm.
don't know why it just didn't. The second half of the second season didn't hold my
Didn't
attention the
stick.
way the first. Yeah, that first season was, like you said, splitting gut, side splitting, hilarious to me. I
Hmm.
thought it was incredibly funny. Um, but yeah, like I said, it was a New Girl was a very similar kind of show, and
Yeah.
that held my attention a lot longer. I didn't do all 7 seasons of New Girl because that was
Yeah, same,
it.
same.
Yeah, like it definitely had gotten played way before 7 seasons. Um, but I did. I think I might have lasted maybe 3 or 4 of New Girl seasons.
Okay. It was a good
But
show
yeah,
too.
I
It was
agree.
it
I
started
did.
off
I
good.
enjoyed happy endings. Hmm. And it's funny
Oh,
because now ABC would kill for those numbers because I'm just looking at the numbers that it was pulling in at 1.3 million viewers, or 1.2 in the demographics for 18 to 49 before viewership took a dive. But nowadays,
mm,
shoot, 3 million viewers on broadcast TV, you're going to get a lot of
that's
seasons.
gold. You right? Exactly.
What a difference a
Exactly.
decade makes. Yeah, and for
That
those who
person
don't
don't
know, like
lie.
this was like 2011 through 2013, so that's why it's a while ago. But yeah, I enjoyed Happy Endings, and I actually enjoyed Damon Wayans Jr.'s second show. That was soon thereafter on BET. He was in
Oh
a
yeah,
series that
the married couple.
hit. Yeah, that was funny for
Uh
me.
huh. It was. Yeah.
And then he kind of did something else with them too. That was let me see if I can pull it up. That he did something else where it was him and some more Wayans, like the cousins of the Wayans, because like apparently the whole family is funny, like multiple
Yep.
generations of funny. But it was like some brothers and some cousins on BT, and that show was funny, and I was like, okay,
Oh, I didn't know about that one.
yeah, I thought he was gonna, because I haven't seen him as much in more recent years. Though he was in The
Did
Harder
you
They
think he?
Fall.
Oh, was he? Oh, you know what? I
Yeah,
haven't
I
even
just
been
pulled up
keeping
his
it. So there you go.
IMDb. So he's doing a lot of doing a lot
Oh,
of what do you call it? Cartoons, voiceover work. So,
okay, okay. I thought he would have
uh-huh.
like really broken out and do the damn thing like his dad did, or maybe even more popular then. Because I mean, you look at him and you see Damon, right? So it almost felt like you're getting a 2 for 1, but you know where the talent is stemming from, right? But I really thought that he would have gone on to do a lot more than what we've been presented with. It's too
Yeah,
bad.
he's in How to Be Second Generation Wayans. That was the one that is did a little bit of that. He did another show that How to Be Single, um, Happy Together, which only lasted 1 season.
Happy together. That's it. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Mhm.
Yeah, he stays booked though. I mean, I'm looking at his IMDb. He don't miss work. He got
Good for
42 acting
him.
credits.
Good for you. Got to pay
Yeah,
that rent.
five writing credits and 42 acting credits. He doing a little something. Shoot, I didn't know
Okay.
he was a staff writer on My Wife and Kids. He was a staff writer
I
for
did not know
30
that
episodes
either.
of My Wife and Kids, story editor for 27 episodes for that show. Yeah, he you know, that family takes care of each other. You're not gonna hear no stories about how the Wayans don't look out for one another.
Word. So true. So true.
So,
But he's
well,
mad
yes.
talented, so good.
Yeah, you know, it's kind of like you get a little bit of Damon Wayans Senior's humor, but you get a little bit of Sean's cuteness. A lot of Sean Wayans cuteness. Damon Wayans Jr. is actually
Yeah,
cute.
you can stare at him all day long. Yes.
Yeah, he's a cutie. All right,
Mm.
let's switch it up to my obsession. One of my favorite things is the musical. And the
Yes.
musical that I will pick. Well, let me see if you can guess. What musical you think do I think people should have paid attention to and and are missing out on? Let's see if you can guess.
Your I know there's no way I can guess because your musical repertoire is way more in depth than my knowledge. There is no way because I would have
I am
if
obsessive.
you are very obsessive with musicals. This much I know about you, and you love like the good shit, which is fantastic. And again, I'm going to be learning again with this next choice. Um, but because if I didn't know you and we were sitting here having a conversation, I would have gone with West Side Story because you spoke so eloquently about it previously when we were talking about the
Oh, the
readaptation
film, the
and
movie,
the older
right?
one. Yeah. So
I
I would
forgot
have
I
gone
even
with
did that.
that.
No, I mean,
Okay,
well,
so
West Side
talk
Story.
to
Well,
me.
you know, only because this series is about, or at least tonight's episode is about unsung, like or not, or forgotten, maybe sung at one point but forgotten. So I'm gonna go with 1973's Tony Award winner for Best Musical for that year, Raisin. Raisin is a musical with music by Judd Walden, lyrics by Robert Bertan, a book by Robert Nimroff and Charlotte Zatzberg. You can hear a lot of white folks naming that. But Raisin is an adaptation of Lorraine Hansberry's play, A Raisin in the Sun. The musical's book
Okay.
was co-written by Hansberry's husband, Robert Nimroff, who was indeed white. Um, and it originated at the Arena Stage Theater. For those of you who are regional theater people who know a little bit about something about Washington, D.C., Arena Stage is in Washington. It's one of my favorite theater places to go when I lived there. Before it ultimately took Broadway by storm. So the story, for those who are not familiar with The Raisin in the Sun, even though that has been revived to death, we even
Yep.
have a more recent movie with Sean Puffy Combs as the lead. Inexplicably, he
Right.
is the weakest link in that. In an otherwise gorgeous production. Oh my God, it's so many amazing, like Felicia Rashad, and so
Mm.
everybody eats it. Everybody, Sanaa Lathan, everybody eats it in the film for the more recent film version, except Sean Puffy Combs is so irritating. Anyway, the story followed Lorraine's Hansberry play about an African American family in Chicago in 1951, struggling over what to do with insurance money gained by the premature death of the family's patriarch, and what way forward would best secure the family's future out of the hood. The musical was nominated for 9 Tony Awards, winning 2, including Best
Mm.
Musical and Best Performance by a Leading Actress in a Musical for Virginia Capers, who herself once starred in the Broadway show Jamaica with Ricardo Montalban and Lena Horne, and whose career spanned 40 years. Uh, the original Broadway production ran for 847 performances, which is a hit. Um, Now, why is this show important? Other than the fact that it's a musical version of The Raisin in the Sun, Raisin has the distinction of being Ralph Carter, who was Michael from Good Times, the Baby Boy,
Mm-hmm.
and Debbie Allen's Broadway debut, playing the
Really?
characters Travis and Benita Younger, respectively. Yes, this is how we brought Debbie Allen came. Baby, she comes out with her first time on Broadway in a smash, and the best musical of the year.
Damn.
It also
Okay.
showcased Helen Martin, Pearl from the TV series 227.
Mm-hmm.
Ernestine Jackson, who would have a count them three, all black cast Broadway run, starting with the all black cast of Hello Dolly, starring Pearl Bailey, Raisin, where she played Ruth Younger, and the all black cast of Damon Runyon's Guys and Dolls, which featured one Robert Guillaume. For those of you who think that name sounds familiar, he was the star of Sports Night and Benson, where he played the title
Mm-hmm.
character, Benson. Um, he also was the first black man to play Phantom in the LA run of Phantom of the Opera. And Papa Pope himself, Joe Morton, as the iconic Walter Lee Younger. But y'all ain't even know Joe Morton could sing. And baby, he blew in that role.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
A role forever associated with Sidney Poitier's original Broadway run when Raisin in the Sun was a straight play and not a musical. So Ralph, Ernestine, and Joe would all go on to win Theater World Awards for their performances. Theater World Awards were a big deal for a time. The songs from the 1975 Grammy Award-winning cast album were my entry into this show. The songs from it are beautifully of their time. You get big gospel numbers like He Comes Down This Morning and a Sweet Jackson 5-ish Sidewalk Tree, both murdered, absolutely decimated by Ralph Carter, who was giving you his best impression of Michael Jackson in the Jackson 5. African-inspired music and dance with Aleyo, which was danced by Debbie Allen for African dance to that song. An absolutely buttery, bluesy duet that should have been on Black radio at the time called Sweet Time that is slayed by Ernestine and Joe. My favorite, though, is one that I have philosophically kept very close to my heart all this time called Measure the Valleys, whose lyrics are pulled directly from Lorraine Hansberry's play when Walter Lee realizes he's been conned out of the family's money. His sister Benita kicks him when he's already down, since part of that money was supposed to pay for her medical school tuition. Lena defends him by calling out against swift judgment and saying the time to love someone isn't when they're doing well and up and right. It's when they're low and the world has whipped them so. That chastened me to the quick because I'm a Capricorn and I'm judgmental as fuck. So it made me take a good look at myself as she sung in her bluesy best, measure the valleys, measure the hills. I was like, yes, come through, Virginia Capers. At the time, this Black musical was a huge phenomenon. They were on the cover of Ebony, the whole the principal cast. It was beloved even by the New York Times. But today, you never hear about Raisin. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that it's never again been revived on Broadway nearly 50 years later. It hasn't even enjoyed a second life on Broadway's Encore's concert series, which is a series in New York dedicated to musicals that were at risk of being forgotten because of a lack of revivals. A production in Long Beach was staged in 2003, another in Chicago in 2006. And for a brief moment, there was a disastrous, and I do mean disastrous, national tour that Maurice Hines, yes, that's Gregory Hines' brother, tried to produce and star in with Peabo Bryson. It was not good. They were both too old.
People right.
Yeah, they were both too old for the roles. And it was an underfunded enterprise, and it was lambasted by the critics. So when people name Black musicals, they mention The Color Purple, The Wiz, Dreamgirls, Ain't Misbehavin', even Sophisticated Ladies. But Raisin, which was a rare book show at a time when most Black shows of the era were song and dance reviews, had a memorable songs, had a first-rate cast, and it deserves better. Give it a listen on the streaming service or on YouTube to get a feel for the excellent score and lyrics based on a legendary award-winning play. That's Raisin, y'all. What you got for me, AMC? What you think about
Okay.
Raisin and these stars?
Man. I know, you're pulling out all of these like really gut punching pieces with a whole bunch of star power. Like I had no idea this was even on deck. That Raisin was on deck. I have to add though, honestly, in Canada, we have our little, Broadway row where we get certain shows that come through. We will not get a really like big contingent of black plays or just heavy plays like that. We usually get Kinky Boots, which was fantastic, or Les Miserables, which I fell asleep at. And
you fell asleep doing Les Mis? Oh my God, that's blasphemy!
And I love the Miz. The thing is that I love
the white
it.
people singing about their freedom didn't do it for you.
Oh my God! Like, get free, goddammit! I was just like, it took too long. Like, just go. It wasn't happening for me. I don't know. And the transition for me, I didn't like the whole. She was a kid in 1 second, and you blink, and all of a sudden, everything just changed. I was like, whoa, where was the progression? No, it was too choppy for me and too long. Oh my God, it was exasperating. But like something like Raisin, nah, bro. I don't think you'd really see that too tough. I would have to go to New York to see that. Um, I think the musical I'm going to speak about in a minute, I know did come up here on a tour. I wanted to go see it again, but I was like, you know what, I'm good. It's okay. I'll let it be. But there are a few sprinkles here and there, but to see things like that or productions like you said Raising the Sun, I'm trying to think of or Fences, like something like Fences, you wouldn't see that. You wouldn't see that unless
you wouldn't see
there was
August Wilson.
Believe it or not, right? Okay, wouldn't see that here. Canada. Okay.
But Toronto is known for having Toronto is like the West End and New York's Broadway. Like y'all actually have a theater district that's kind of world renowned. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But you say no black shows.
Is. Not heavy like that, no. I think at most I can honestly say The Lion King, which of course would have found its way here. Right. The Lion King is totally international, right? So, and that would have been my pick if it wasn't something that everybody and their mother and father and pets have seen. That show has
nobody's unsung. that
exactly my point.
That show has earned like $5 billion globally.
Thank you.
It has over 1,000 productions of it around the world. Like, no, we can never give that to the Lion King. She's canon, honey. She's top tier.
That's a whole other level.
So what music do you get for us?
I have Fella. Fella for me was goddamn amazing. I'm not sure.
Are you supposed to pronounce it Fella or is it Fila? Is it
Fila or Fella? There's no accent, so I always say Fela Kuti was his name, no?
Fila? You might be correct. Americans, we always messing people's stuff up. We just come up with our own, especially Black Americans, child. By the time we done, his name is Fila. Let me see if they give a pronunciation for him on Wikipedia.
That's interesting that you think
no, it doesn't. It just says, it doesn't give a pronunciation. But you can go ahead and call him. What was you calling him? Fella. Yeah, because when you first said Fella, I was like, what musical is Fella? And I started doing Fella. Like the most happy fella. I'm like, well, this you right. You got an
Oh
obscure musical.
man.
Oh, you have stumped me. I don't even know this
Oh
musical.
please. Oh
But
my
no,
God,
but I do
please,
know.
please.
I have seen fella. I guess I will be calling him from now on. Yeah, I'm sure somebody
No,
will give us a
I'm
note
gonna
on
look that
this.
up. Yes, please do. I'm really curious now because I'm like, wait, I've been saying this man's name wrong all this time.
I think only
I'm
because I
man.
mean the American. I mean, I remember when the Tonys came and they called it Fila. Um,
Okay.
but you might be correct. It might be fella.
I don't know. Now I'm not sure. So y'all
No,
don't
yeah.
race over the
Give us
grave.
a note. At
Like
least we know you listen. If you give us a note, give us a note. Let us know. Hold on, let me see.
exactly.
Let me see if I get pronunciation on. Google does all the things.
It does.
Oh, okay, hold on. See, it sounds like Fela. It's Fela.
Fela. Okay.
Fay
Fela.
dash Luh. Fela.
So Fela Kuti. Okay, there we go.
Mm-hmm.
Fela. Uh-uh. All right.
I
I'll give
was
one
wondering.
to
I
the
was
Americans. Okay.
like, yeah, it's true because Google did say this American pronunciation.
Fela.
So, meanwhile, the
Oh,
Africans are
great.
like, that is not his
Great.
name. This name is not Fela.
Exactly.
You Americans, child,
Oh,
we getting
man.
gat.
Oh, God. Oh, my
So
God.
anyway, go ahead. I'm sorry, I have totally interrupted your segment.
That is
Go ahead and
all right. 'Cause
give us the musical challenge. What you loved about it. Whew.
I loved everything about it. Every single thing. Again, I'm not sure how many people saw it in its run. I know it did get its Broadway,
Mm-hmm.
Broadway time. I saw it off Broadway twice. So when it started, I was there. I have a little bit of a sore spot for Fela. Okay, because I worked in HMV back in the day, and that's where I was introduced to his music. We used to play his albums on repeat. I mean, horns blaring, production, live performances. It was like a full out concert going on in the R&B and soul room. We did not play. And of course, that wasn't the area where Fela you'd find Fela. So, we used to get enough people coming in going, who's that? And what are you listening to? But his songs go on for like a good 7 to 12 minutes. It's not like a little 2 minute stint. So you can imagine the influence over the years. It stuck with me for a very long time. Like I really do. I can't understand some of it, but music is transcendency, so it transcends. Um, I love the music. So for me, attending this was a no brainer. Um, as I said, I saw it twice, and the draw of the smaller size theater, of course, off Broadway, it added to the production for me. It was a way more intimate setting, and I was able to absorb so much more of the play than if I was watching it in a Broadway theater. The play takes place during the time Kuti's performances at the Shrine in Lagos, Nigeria, were to be banned. He was under the
Mm-hmm.
watchful eye of the government because he used to speak unabashedly about their sanctions and what he did not like and contested everything about the government. They did not like this, so he was the mark of constant scrutiny and harassment and everything else you can think of by the soldiers. And I believe there was like almost like a standoff with a number of soldiers outside of the club at a certain point. So now this was conceived by Bill T. Jones, who I was really honored to meet and speak to for a bit. Excuse me, way before this evening came to fruition. This was at Brooklyn Museum. And Steve Handel and Jim Lewis, and choreographed by Mr. Jones himself. And it's a production of colorful hues and amazingly haunting vocals by Abina Kumsen. That's who I saw first, who played Fella's mother. And please, again, don't rake me over the coals if I'm mispronouncing names. My apologies. The cast also featured the cast also featured Sar Nagweja as Fela. So now the Broadway production, when it switched over, it shifted gears, and of course, it had a few star-studded names in there. It was still directed and choreographed by Jones, and the cast included Sarah Naguja, so she was still there as sorry, he was still there as Fela, and who else did I see there? Michelle Williams stepped in as the mother for a bit as Sandra, and who else was in there? Sorry, backtrack. Michelle Williams was Sandra, and Lilas White was, and his mother's name is, please don't rake me over the coals again. Fun Milayo. There we go. There we go. Yes, I think I got it. And after that, I remember hearing, and please correct me if I'm wrong because I didn't get time to search that, but I do remember hearing Patti LaBelle was somewhere in there as well at some point, and she was playing the mother for a while. For me, it came down to Abina Kumsen because I always remember her vocals and how it just reverbed off of the walls in that place with all of the colors going and the effects and the disco when she was singing. There was a certain song I really can't remember at this point, but her voice was insane. It was so chilling but beautiful simultaneously. It was gorgeous. It was just amazing. So this play was a lot of everything for me. The music, the storyline, everything was pretty, well connected and well written, and I enjoyed every minute of it. And of course, this thing went on to win how many? I think it was not. No, 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 let me read my
It was
notes.
nominated a lot, but
It
it did
was
not win.
nominated. Wasn't
Yeah,
it
it
nominated for
actually,
11 Tonys?
yeah,
But
it
it picked up
matched
like three,
it matched La Caja Fall, but
right?
La Caja Falls, what do we call it? Revival of that
Uh
show
huh.
took a lot of those awards. So no, it got nominated
Mm-hmm.
for a bunch of Drama Desk awards, but it only won the
Mm-hmm.
Tony Award for Best Choreography, Best Costume Design, and Best Sound Design. So Bill T. Jones did win
Mm.
one, but he won for Best Choreography. It
Choreography,
lost.
yeah,
It
which is
lost both the
surprising.
Grammy and the best. And it got nominated for the Olivier Award too overseas when it played
Hmm.
in Britain, in London, on the West End.
Okay, okay. Because yeah,
Yeah.
that
So
I mean, I'm so surprised that it didn't. I remember that year that it didn't pick up for any of the leads because really and truly, my God in heaven. But then again, it was the different actors, right? So that those
well,
nominations were from Broadway, right?
yeah,
The
those were the
Tony
Broadway
nominations
ones.
were from the
Those
Broadway
were the Tony
show, not the
nominations.
off Broadway. Right,
But the guy
right. So I
Kevin
think,
Mambo. Oh, can
uh
you?
huh.
I think we having a delay again. Kevin Mambo, who played Fela, um, he was in like I think he did all of them. I think he was like with it for a long time because I know he did the national tour as well.
Mm,
And then I kind of understand it, right? Like, where are you gonna get? Like, you're the lead. You're in almost every scene. You get to play this iconic character. I'm sure he
yeah,
would have stuck with that anywhere and everywhere it went. And you got the mother's name right. The actress name is Lilius White. I'm a huge Lilius White fan.
really
So,
is what. Okay,
and Patti LaBelle
thank
replaced
you.
Lilius. Yeah, Patti LaBelle replaced Lilius um, in September of 2010, and then the production closed January 2nd, 2011. I actually saw Patti LaBelle play the mother when I saw it.
Oh, what did you think? What did you
Oh,
think?
I love the show. I love the show. I thought it was a high
Mm,
energy show. Um,
yeah.
I wasn't as familiar with his music, so I enjoyed that aspect of it, and learning about the political nature, and kind of the abuse he suffered at the hands
Hmm.
of an oppressive government regime. Yeah, I enjoyed. I mean, I think there was some conversation at the time around the like that. the women all seem to be there kind of in service of him, which was probably true in real life as well, right? Like
Well,
it's not
yeah.
the most feminist
He
of
had how
film
many wives?
of shows, right? Like, because he had lots of wives,
He
and the
did.
wives are, and then like the women are just supposed to just understand. It's very Bob Marley, right? Like the women just have to
Yeah.
understand that there are going to be a lot of other women. Um,
Mhm.
but
Mhm.
yeah, no, I enjoyed Fela, and you're right. It's not. I didn't realize it had been as long as it's been since it came out. It is actually due for a revival because that was, it debuted October 19th, 2009,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
so that was what 13 years ago. So yeah,
Oh my
we could
god.
do with another revival. It did well enough business. It got staged in multiple places around the world.
Yeah.
Let's get another
Yeah, it did.
revival. And it's not one of those musicals that you hear black folks talk about when they list
At
black
all.
musicals. So you're correct
Mhm.
in that regard too. Yeah, that was a good one. You picked good.
Thank you. That means a lot coming from you, Sensei. Thank you.
I wouldn't have guessed that. That was good.
Yeah,
All
I love
right.
this one.
I see you with your secret Broadway bona fides. Um,
I'm just trying to be
okay,
like you.
child. I was always telling people, aim higher, baby, aim higher. Um,
Stop.
TV show. We're gonna go ahead and pivot away from my favorite subject to my other favorite subject, which is television. So you actually listed a comedy for your comedy film. You actually listed a TV show, so it's gonna be interesting to see what you do around TV show, if anything. So my TV show is some may take issue with me calling it a TV show because it is 2020's Small Acts, which technically is a 5-film anthology series that made up a limited series on both BBC iPlayer and Amazon Prime. It is directed by the legendary Steve McQueen. You may know Steve's
Mm.
work from things like 12 Years a Slave.
Mhm.
Um, and what is that other one the sexy one that he did that everybody was talking stuff about? uh with the white man. I'm
Yeah,
being
hold
extra
on,
black
hold
right
on.
now. I'm like
Oh,
super
with the
vague. I'm
white.
like, this the sexy movie with the white man.
You are
Yeah,
horrible.
I'm completely. Let me see. And because he did a bunch of movies that had one word, hunger and shame. Shame was the sexy one, because that was about sex addiction. And hunger
Mm.
was about the Irish hunger strike. So it was interesting. His first two the first two not were actually weren't American, but his first two films of note were actually about white folks. But Steve McQueen is very black. And I actually know him from before that for a film short that he did that was very homoerotic called Bear, that had big black boys, big black men who were full figured, engaged in some very homoerotic activities. In any case, McQueen's Small Acts series did receive a lot of like critical acclaim a couple of years ago when it came out, but I never
Mm.
really hear anybody talking about them. And let me give a quick down and dirty. So
I
these
agree.
tell 5 very unique stories about West Indian immigrants in the UK. From Mangrove, which is about the historic trial of the Mangrove Nine in 1971, which I did not know about until this film, to Red, White, and Blue, which is about the Black Police Association founder Leroy Logan, played by John Boyega. Um,
Mhm.
and each of these films are worth watching. Malachi Kirby, who is so sexy, for those of you who don't remember Malachi Kirby, he got to play um, uh oh god, I was about to say Toby.
Oh
That
my
is
god.
bad. The lead character for Roots, Kunta Kinte. He got to play
Kunte?
Kunta Kinte, because everybody always no, he gets whipped And he's like, my name is Luther Kinte. He's like, your name is Toby. So,
Toby.
like,
That's true. I
so
forgot
that's where
about
I
that.
went to.
That's right.
It's so sad. My colonial conditioning went to Toby before I went to Kunta Kinte. That's so sad.
Uh.
So Malachi Kirby won the Best Supporting Actor BAFTA, which is their Oscars over there in the UK, for his role as Darcus Howe in Mangrove. John Boyega won Best Supporting Actor at the Golden Globes for his role as Leroy
Oh, I
Logan in
remember
Red,
that.
White, and Blue. Right.
Mm.
So this was like, these like big deal actors, big awards. But the two of the episodes from the series were selected into the 2020 Cannes Film Festival. The series premiered on November 15th, 2020 on BBC One in the UK, and November 20th, 2020 on Amazon Prime, which is how I saw it in the United States.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
the title "Small Acts" is comes from a Bob Marley song, a 1973 song called "Small Acts," where the lyric is "Small acts fall big tree," or "If you are the
Mhm.
big tree, we are the small acts." So I'm going to talk a little bit about my faves from the series. So the absolute number one must see of this series, if you don't watch anything else, Lovers Rock. Lovers Rock is a single evening at a house party in the early 1980s West London. It sets the scene, is showing intertwined relationships against a background of violence, different kinds of violence and threats of violence, romance, music. The title "Lovers Rock" is not is not a nod to Sade's "Lovers Rock." For those
No,
who might be
sir.
thinking it, it is a type of slow, romantic, R&B infused reggae style of music that was very
Yep.
popular in the 70s and 80s. And Janet Case 1979 hit "Silly Games" plays very prominently in Lovers Rock. There's a moment in the show where the DJ is playing the song and everybody's singing along with it, and he drops the song out, and you just hear the voices of all the people at the party still singing in amazing harmony
Mm.
Janet K's "Silly Games," and they are killing it. It is just a gorgeous, sumptuous, cinematic moment. The whole thing is gorgeous. The whole thing is amazing. Lovers Rock
That's a
is a
vibe.
absolute must see. It is a total vibe. Um,
Yep.
and if you love Lovers Rock, after you watch it, that one episode, and it's a very short episode, like an hour. Also, and you don't even have to be West Indian, UK, none of that. I didn't know anything about any of that. But I was born in 75 and I grew up in, very black, super black households. And that could have been a blue light in the basement party in any black city. Like in America, the music just would have been straight R&B instead of Lovers Rock. But the feel, the aesthetic, the hair, the clothes, it brought back such nostalgia from my childhood. I actually thought it was
Mhm.
set in the late 70s until I had checked it out. And it was like, oh, it's actually supposed to be in the early 80s. But anyway, if you love that film, I also recommend Mcqueen's 3-part documentary, Uprising, which is this vivid and visceral 3-part documentary series comprised of 3 1-hour long episodes examining 3 events from 1981 in the UK: the New Crossfire that killed 13 black youth, the Black People's Day of Action, which saw more than 20,000 people join the first organized mass protest by black British people, and the Brixton riots. And all of those 3 events are intertwined and were born out of a Lovers Rock party where the black people say someone threw a firebomb canister into the party, that ultimately killed 13 black kids that were at that
Mhm.
event, at that party. And it's a really, I mean, I know it's kind of, sad and harrowing, but it's a good companion to the Lovers Rock. So like you get a feel for what that party could have been like, if you watch Lovers Rock, and then if you watch the documentary, you're like, oh shit, like because you could see that could have actually been that party. That's how well they do it. In any case, the other story that I love from this series is called Education. It's a coming of age story of 12-year-old Kingsley, who has a fascination for astronauts and rockets. When Kingsley is pulled to the headmaster's office for being disruptive in class as a young black boy, he discovers he's being sent to a school for those with quote unquote special needs. Sound familiar, Americans? Distracted by working two jobs, his parents are unaware of the unofficial segregation policy at play that prevented many black children from receiving the education they deserve. Like, I wept. I openly wept watching Education because that wasn't my story. I was placed in gifted classes in school, but I did know people like Kingsley who, were a little had too much energy for the classroom. Sometimes these white women teachers are not interested in having to deal with all of that, managing all of that energy from boys, black boys in particular. And next thing you know, they've sent that kid off to the class that's supposed to be for the special needs kids, and these kids haven't been diagnosed, haven't been assessed, haven't been nothing. They just thrown into a class. And in this instance, and what caused me to weep, like they were learning nothing in this classroom. Like the teacher was completely overwhelmed and unprepared, was not teaching them anything, assumed they were stupid. A lot of these kids were very bright. And so they were literally just housing them in a room for the hours it took for them to be in the classroom, and then sending them home. And a lot of the parents weren't aware that this was happening to almost exclusively black and brown kids. Brown in UK being Southeast Asian. And so when the parents found out, they rebelled and tried to bring attention to the fact that this was happening, and that this kind of racism was happening to their kids. And so again, this could have been an American story. And that's true. There's, the story of the Mangrove Nine, which clashed with London police in 1970. And you get to see the racial hatred within the Metropolitan Police Department in the UK, which is like very in your face. I felt like that could have been 1950s South. Like they weren't holding back. They were very, in this Mangrove was it wasn't an official community center, but it became a community center. It became a base for the local intellectuals and activists who were West Indian in the UK, and the police kept raiding it like over and over and over, and destroying. Every time they were raided, they would destroy it. They would purposely tear up. Yeah, they would purposely tear it up, and eventually 9 men and women, including Frank, who was the owner, a leader of the Black Panther Party movement. Letitia Wright plays that character. Althea Jones. I'm gonna ruin her last name. Laquante. It's like French. I'm sure I'm ruining that. And activist Darkest Howe are wrongly arrested and charged with inciting a riot, which the police actually incited. And they won, but they kept still having to deal with in the postscript, which was kind of both sad and inspiring, they kept having to go to court for years because the police kept creating fake charges, and all they have to go and defend themselves, and it was just a hot mess. But anyway, Mangrove is another story. Red, White, and Blue and Alex Wheatle, those got a lot of play. I thought they were okay. I didn't love them as much as I love the first three that I mentioned: Mangrove, Education, and Lovers Rock. But the Red, White, and Blue is the story about the Black police officer who feels like he can change the police from the inside out, the racist attitudes. And, it's kind of hard to have sympathy for that kind of character. It was clear the police is beating their ass. This is all of these stories kind of take place around the same period. So that, the same 10 to 15 year period. So, the police are unrelenting in their racism. They're very upfront, very aggressive. It's not like they're hiding it. They're planting drugs on people, they're making up trumped up charges. Very Baltimore, very we own this city. And this is
Mm-hmm.
happening in like another country that's supposed to be more progressive than the U.S. Um, and he's like, I'm going in, I'm gonna change it from the inside. I mean, and maybe his Black Police Association, because this was again based on a true story of Leroy Logan, maybe they were able to do that. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But he did stick it out. And yeah, I mean, and then I kind of felt like the way the film ended, it wasn't satisfying. I didn't feel like, it kind of left almost judging Leroy as like stupid. I don't know. It was
Ouch! Oh shit!
I mean, because he was still trying to like make the white people do right, and they were just like playing in his face, and
Mm.
and trying to get rid of him, like trying to actually set him up. There was a situation where they tried to murder him, like get him
Oh damn!
put him in a situation where he didn't have backup, where he would end up
Mm.
getting murdered. And obviously, he didn't, but it was just like, girl, you wouldn't have to tell me.
Okay. Right.
you,
Holy.
you ain't got it. You only got one good time. I got the message, sis. Okay. Okay. I am not gonna die for no police job. You got me fucked up.
Mm.
I mean, and I don't know. I think a lot of times as we've seen in America, you think you're going in and gonna transform it, and they end up transforming you.
Mm.
You end up becoming part of their system, not the other way around. But anyway, obviously he's done
Facts.
some good in the UK because he's worthy of John Boyega playing him in the film. But anyway, that's
Right.
my TV series, Small Acts. Definitely watch them. They're amazing, and definitely check out the documentaries that Steve McQueen has. He has three. I only just talked about Uprising, but he has three about the Black British experience in the UK that are very illuminating. And you'll definitely recognize parallels to the Canadian experience and the American experience with racism.
It's funny because I was really disappointed that that didn't get as much traction as it did. I did start it and I thought it was fantastic. I need to finish it. But from what I saw, it was great, and yeah, a lot of the Caribbean influence and storyline and everything, it hits home, right? Uh, I really thought that it would have a lot more people would have taken to it. I read like a couple of articles from you know from what's it called, Britain, the English side there from England,
The
and
Guardian,
of course, and
The
yes, that's it, the
Guardian.
Guardian. Yeah. So from the Lord,
I was hoping it was The
from
Guardian and not the Daily Mirror or the Daily Mail.
no, no, let's get that right. No,
For those who
but
don't
a
know, the
lot of
Daily Mail is essentially the National Enquirer of the
yeah,
UK.
smut, UK smut. Yeah, I just with of course, again, because the storylines were mostly rooted there. A lot of people watching there, my cousins, I spoke to them about it, they really dug it, they thought it was really dope. But here it didn't take off the way that I thought it would take off. So um I know people here did get into it and they did watch it, but there wasn't as much discussion about it that I thought would have taken place. So yeah,
Right.
I'm not
Yeah, I
surprised at you
really
about
only heard critics, like the white critics were the only real champions of it. I didn't hear black people talking about it as much.
it.
And,
Yeah,
it hurt my heart. It hurt my heart for Steve McQueen because, I mean, he's one of our our tours who does really
yeah.
high quality work. And he was bringing stories that I personally would have never heard of or never received otherwise. It was like getting the Eyes on the Prize documentaries from from the Black Brits perspective.
Uh huh.
So it was great to get these stories because I wouldn't have, again, you kind of have these romantic notions about what these other countries are like for black people, and then you just reading and you find it's the same shit that you dealing with at home.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
So we've come to our last thing. I'm gonna let you go first. Go ahead with
Album.
our album.
Sucky now.
Album.
All right. So this album, it's funny. I start off like this all the time, right? This holds a soft spot for me. Well, a lot of these things kind of bring back a lot of memories and whatnot. So this one is a memorable one for myself and my dad. Um, I am going to be talking about the Atlantic Rhythm and Blues, 1947 to 1974, Volume 6. Yeah, it's a long title. Double album. It's a double vinyl album from Atlantic Records.
Wow.
Yeah. So we had this radio station. I'm going to give you guys a little background. We had a little radio station here, not here, sorry, in Montreal called CKGM. And my dad is the one who pushed me to call for a little trivia game thing that they were doing to answer their trivia question. I got it right. I got through. I won. This was my gift. So, my prize, sorry. So, the two people in my life who I consider my musical senseis were my cousin, who put me on to all of the goodness of the 80s and up, and my dad, who put me on to everything else previous to that. So, he was the old school sensei. So now moving on to this album, the track list is stellar. Even though my dad taught me about his favorites, his ultimate favorites, Aretha Franklin, Otis Redding, Wilson Pickett. I think I already told you all I have a sister named Aretha. Don't know if I did.
Mm.
Um, yeah, he loved himself some Aretha Franklin. He owns every album in vinyl, more like I own it now. I have a massive record collection because of him. Otis Redding, Wilson Pickett, Booker T and the MGs, Roberta Flack. This album has pickings of individual songs and mostly like our favorites from all of the above mentioned artists and more that were in the Atlantic vaults. The artwork on the album is a melange of hues, blue and green, and the liner notes, which I was a huge stickler for. Still am, but that's hard to come by. And a beautiful booklet, thick ass booklet, y'all, with a lot of history on the songs, writers, producers, alongside stories of the artists on the Atlantic roster. It's a gorgeous compilation and a beautiful, beautiful collection item. If you want to be taken for a proper ride through like the Atlantic golden years of music, this volume would be an ideal one to get for your collection. There's songs like, the usual Try a Little Tenderness by Otis Redding, Do Right Woman, Do Right Man, Aretha Franklin, Otis and Carla's Tramp, which is one of my favorites, Brooke Benton's Rainy Night in Georgia, and one of my favorite songs, fun fact, is Wilson Pickett's Land of a Thousand Dances. That used to be my jam with my dad. So, um, mine is short and sweet. Just remember, double album. That's 4 sides of glorious vinyl and the crackling sound that like that romantic, je ne sais quoi, when you put on light a little candle and do the damn thing. Yeah, that your listening pleasure, all right there. 4 albums. That's what it feels like. 4 albums. But I love,
Wow.
love, love that album. It's a fantastic album. And it's something that, you most probably see it and be like, and keep on scrolling. But it really is a great compilation. And I think the stories in the booklet really add to it. It's fantastic. Check it out.
No, it sounds amazing. I'm an Atlantic Records fan. I own the documentary about Atlantic Records. It's a great documentary if you haven't had a chance to see it.
Mm,
Tells that story. Uh, you get the Ray Charles story in there, Aretha Franklin, and Atlantic Records was at the center of everything in the '60s, going
mhm,
into the early
mhm,
'70s. So yeah, I mean those songs are great. I have as a young music aficionado, I would get obsessed with periods or acts. And there
mm,
was a period in which I was obsessed with '60s soul. and
Mm-hmm.
Sam and Dave and Otis Redding and Carla
Yeah.
and Rufus. Not Rufus the band, but Stax
I
Records
got you.
Rufus.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, I mean, so you definitely had like a period where a lot of those songs that you listed were part of my everyday listening. Um, and yes, I think that's a great pick.
Yeah.
And I was smiling the whole time because I love that it was also very personal for you. Because my
Yeah.
pick is also incredibly personal to me. So,
Oh, what you got?
um, so some of you may not know it, but for a very brief time in my life, lasted about 18 to 24 months. I think like 18 months is probably more accurate. Operated as a manager of a band, actually a few acts, Rep Life, a little bit, very, very, very little bit of April Sempe. Um, and ultimately, the band I spent the most time with and that got me to agree to become a manager was a band out of Baltimore called Marcel and the Truth. Now,
Oh my God,
Chicago.
Marcel. No way.
Yeah, so Marcel and the Truth had came out the gate swinging hard with an album that
Mm-hmm.
steppers in Chicago fully embraced, unintentionally. Even though hand dancing and steppers, Chicago steppers and Baltimore hand dancing are cousins, essentially the same style of dancing. And there's a tempo that is a preferred tempo range for steppers and hand dancing to happen, which is kind of very
Mm-hmm.
romantic 70s era type of dancing that still is prominent in Black communities in Baltimore and in Chicago. I grew up learning how to hand dance. So we called it stepping again as a kid with my mom. It's something that you did with your mom.
Mm-hmm.
And so that name of that album was their debut, Hopes Too High, and it was a good album. I don't know if I think I must have reviewed it because it alerted Marcel to me, and he invited me to come see him live at Blues Alley in
Uh-huh.
DC, which is a very small but legendary,
Oh
iconic
man.
venue. And
Yeah.
so I came to come see him there, and he sung a couple of songs from his forthcoming new album, and one of the songs was the title of the album that I've picked, which is Symbols. And
Mm-hmm.
in it, he talked about all of the different ways that people front, right? Like that they're more devoted and committed to the appearance of things than the real of things. That and how this harms their children, and what it teaches their children, how it harms their relationships, and how we all kind of like are trying to live this. And this is like way before IG was like a thing, right? And social media had really taken off. We were still like on MySpace land at that time. Um, Unless you were like in college, then you might have knew about Facebook. But at the time, you saw like how television was. We were all trying to live this kind of television and music video illusion, and I was just so excited that lyrically, one, he could blow his face off. Man, he could sing. And Marcel is like 6'4", Tower of Power. Is a
Mm-hmm.
huge man, both physically imposing. He was a football player and a minister in his prior life. He was still fairly young when I managed him to. He's like, I think maybe might have just turned in his early 30s. Um, and I was just so excited about the fact that he was singing about something. Like it wasn't just, oh, I love her, she loves me,
Yeah,
or
yeah,
I
yeah.
hate you, I hate me, oh, let's fuck. Like it was a song about something. And I remember being like so excited that the songs were philosophical and spiritual and often revelatory.
Yes.
Even when they were about romantic relationships type stuff, it was more about slice of life struggles to maintain family, self-love, and healthy relationships. Like they still were, his songs were still mini ministries. Like even though he had left the
Mhm.
ministry, he didn't leave the ministry, right? Like he was still delivering
Yes.
a psalm to the public and the world through these songs that were really hard to pigeonhole. Like they were timeless. Like they weren't of a specific era. Like you could feel the 80s influence, you could feel the 70s influence. You can
Mm-hmm.
but he also didn't stick with any one genre on exclusively. I mean, it was there, everything was soulful because Marcel is from the church, so everything was going to be sung in a very soulful way. But he has a song about the suicide of his brother called "Wish You Were Here." That's done almost like a Nickelback, light rock way, which is not something you would expect from like an R&B group from Baltimore, right?
Yeah.
He has a piano ballad called "Whole Again," which I think maybe the first few times I heard it, it was my favorite song, and it brought me to tears. And I when I had my 40th birthday party and he performed for my 40th birthday party, I had him sing it, and it's not one of his like go-to songs. He actually had to sing it with the lyrics in front of him on his cell phone, but it's one of my favorite songs, "Whole Again." It's so gorgeous. And then he had like three back to back, could have been huge on radio, kind of knockout songs called like "Just to Be Loved" and "Can't Wait." Um, and he had like this very rhythmic and almost tribal
Mm-hmm.
inspirational song called "Seed You Water." And in my Soul Tracks review, where I gush and gush and gush about this album before I managed them, because I wanted to keep it clean. I had heard aspects of the album as it was being developed. And said, and they asked me would I manage them, and I said, let me review the album first before I do that, because I can't review your album and be your manager. Like that's a
Yeah,
conflict.
yeah, of course.
But I actually for a long time thought he was saying "seed your water," and it's "seed you water." Like it's the seed that you water, but he doesn't do that. So, um,
Um,
and so with "seed you water" symbols, there's another song called "Somewhere in Between." There's these inspirational lessons in there. But he also like "Seed" is also like a party track. Like you can actually do a two-step to that joint. You could dance and get your shoulders shimmying. And it's just
yep, yep.
amazing. Like I loved Symbols. It's still one of my favorite albums of all time. And it's not because it was an independently produced album, even though Bob Powers mastered it. And you
Mhm.
have folks, you have Teddy, God, Teddy's, uh, Jesus Christ. Oh, Teddy Douglas, who did production on um, Hopes Too High, has his hand in there. But you have background vocals by Crystal Brown and Katori, and they're giving you the kind of like Wonder Love harmonies. The band members are Charles C.J. Bennett Jr., Gerald Victory, Gerald Richardson, Austin Lightskin Coughlin, Michael Mike Check Mackey. I mean, and like they're a real band, like they're an actual
Yep.
band. And at that time, this is like 2009, like bands outside of the Roots, there weren't no bands, there were no
Mhm,
black
mhm.
bands, and so which was also a lot to manage because that was 7 people plus background singers. There was a lot of that was a lot of energy, child. hence,
Manager problems.
hence why I only did it for 18 months, right? Like, because
Uh-huh.
I realized that when you're managing, you're also their parent, you're their cheerleader, you're their uh, heavy,
Therapist.
you're the therapist. You have to stop
Mhm.
fights, sometimes physical fights, like literally, like it's just crazy.
Jesus.
But yo, Symbols by Marcel and the Truth. You also, once you fall in love with Symbols, go back and check out Hopes Too High. Marcel has released some solo stuff since then. And the band is involved in various capacities in his solo
Mhm.
offerings. But to me, the first two albums where Marcel and the Truth were together, and it wasn't just Marcel Russell
Yeah.
as a solo artist, are still the best independent, self-produced albums of the era. I think you'll love it. I love to hear some notes from y'all about what you loved on the album, but I think you will absolutely love it. And I think in my review, I said, if there was a vocalist today who comes closest to telling the essence of Luther Vandross, it's Marcel Russell. That's the kind of high praise that I was having for this. And like I said, it made me go from being a critic to actually being in the industry as a manager, because I just I wanted them to win so bad that I wanted to be part of them, helping them win.
They were so dope.
That's my album. Yeah, Symbols.
I remember that. I really, really remember that. I remember that album. Great pick. Honest to goodness. It's an album that I've, no lie, I've forgotten. And when you brought up his name, I was like, oh my God. Yeah, that was I remember that album stuck with me for a while because his voice, his voice is angelic. I loved his voice. And I remember his lyrics always had context. That is what I remembered. It wasn't fluff, as you said. It was always about something going on. It was driven by something. There was always a discussion, a hefty discussion going on, but it came across so beautifully because he sang it so beautifully. So I do remember that. I might have to go and revisit that. I have to go dig through some MP3 files. See if I can.
I think you can find him on the streaming services. I definitely know you can find it on YouTube.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, both albums are on YouTube. I mean, and Marcel has become, let's just say, what was subtle before is very overt and in your face now. He's become kind of an evangelist for men's rights and fathers' rights and some other things that wasn't really part of his music and his ethos before this. I mean, he was obviously like pro-black man, pro-black family. He's also very traditional. He come from the black church. But he had some things happen in his own life, which he talks about on his YouTube channel, that transitioned him to a much, to me, I would say a darker place. But you know, we still have Symbols. We still have, and I would actually recommend some of the songs from his debut solo album too, Marcel Russell. I wouldn't recommend the whole thing. It's a double album. It's a lot there, and it wasn't well mastered. And I said that in my review for it. And I'm not saying anything I didn't say to him. But there are some beautiful songs on his solo album that if you become a fan of Marcel Russell's, based on the 2 band albums, I definitely recommend going ahead and checking out his solo album. So yeah, Marcel and the Truth, y'all. Nice. They were the truth.
Wicked.
All right, so we are at time. Anything else you want to add, Miss AMC?
Sir. No, sir. I am going to continue blaming my child for all kinds of stuff, and I wish you all peace, love, and hair grease.
Obviously, folks, this it's a dark time, and you know there's so much heaviness going on with the 3 mass shootings that have happened back to actually 4 now. Excuse me, there's another one yesterday. 4 mass shootings now back to back in the U.S. that we just wanted to do something that wasn't about that stuff. We wanted to do something that's can help you find some things to brighten your life and your day, bring some joy, some great music, some comedy, something to laugh at, some horror to scare you a little bit, some TV show you can dig into and lose yourself in for a few seasons, you know, just stuff, because we all need those escapes right now. Like I personally can't even engage with a lot of the media around the babies getting shot. It's too heavy for me. So, you know, so hopefully this show, you know, and then obviously, you know, this is not to say that we shouldn't pay attention and shouldn't do everything we can to avoid more of those things, but we also need escape from all of the trauma. It's just, some days it's just too heavy, y'all. It's just too heavy. So anyway, we're closing. This is the Gibson Gazette signing off as we wonder, what are the stories you're telling the world? Better still, what are the stories you're telling yourselves? Good night.